Hello and welcome to Original Lines. I'm your host, Laura Allen, and today we're excited to be talking with Sharon Nyree Williams. Sharon is a storyteller, poet, and performance artist based in Seattle. She's produced 2 spoken word storytelling albums, Humanity and The Consciousness of Love, as well as featured in numerous videos and programs. She's performed live all over the area too, in venues as diverse as the Fremont Abbey Arts Center to Judkins Park Soapbox during the Women's March. And if that isn't enough, she's also the executive director for the Central District Forum for Arts and Ideas. Hi, Sharon, and welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah, it's good to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I heard Sharon do a performance at the Auburn Literary Festival last year, I believe, and I've been wanting to have her on a show ever since, so I'm really glad.
Love that Auburn Festival.
Yep. You sound like quite a busy lady. I think I couldn't get a couple things in there, like you've written plays and you do all this volunteer work and everything like this. So how in the world do you do all this stuff? How do you manage it?
I don't know. I think I'm a little crazy multitasker. Have to stay busy. I have a lot of friends around me that I call Team Sharon members that are supposed to remind me of everything I'm supposed to be doing. And so giving back to the community is always important for me. Telling my stories and being creative keeps me happy. And just trying to be a great arts leader and try to make change in the city and in the field of arts.
Do you find that your job as an arts administrator, does that like play into your personal art? Or do they interact? I mean,
they for the first time a few months ago, I wrote pieces that were performed at my job. For my job, I try to keep it separate as much as possible. But the idea for the event, it was called Back to the Block, was that I would write a couple new pieces, and then I would adapt a couple of other pieces. And so that was the first time it really overlapped. The hard part is making sure that the administrative side doesn't become the creative side, like that doesn't just take over. And so sometimes as an arts leader, you feel as though you're doing your art because you're working in the arts, but you're really not being creative. You're just working for your job. So I have some people around me that remind me constantly, okay, you did this for the organization. What are you doing for yourself? And so I try to keep it separate, but it all feeds into what I think is my purpose in working with artists and helping to develop artists and just to help Black cultural stories be told.
Do you think that being an active artist in the in the scene, in the community and everything, do you think that helps you as an arts administrator?
Yes, it does. Because when you get to tables like, for instance, I'm on the board for Cornish College of the Arts, right? So when I get to that table, and sometimes when you're on boards, you can be on a board with a lot of executives and things of that nature, but having that artist voice on a board like that is one of those where you can remind them, we're talking to artists and what is it about the artists, and our artist's plight is like this. So you can always bring in those contributing factors that some people that aren't in the arts or don't work in the arts don't know. So it is very helpful as an artist to be involved be at the table for other organizations and things of that nature.
Yeah, you'd think. I mean, it seems intuitive that arts organizations would have, want to know the artist's perspective, but I've had experience that it's not always the case. It's not
but I think it's changing. I think more and more people are looking at diversifying their board. And in this case, when I talk about diversity, I mean skill sets and what people are doing, to realize that if you don't have that artist voice there, you're missing a really key piece of the artist's plight, the artist's journey, in the decisions that you're making. And you need that at the table. Mm-hmm.
Well, how is your experience? It seems like for me, kind of doing some background research on you, that you've spent most of your career life here in this area. But have you found that the arts climate here in Seattle is different than other places? Do you have much experience with other like, 'cause I know you grew up in North Carolina. I grew up in Texas. The arts climate here to me is like so different from Texas. It's not even funny, but
Yeah, in North Carolina, I didn't get to do much. And I think it's just a cultural thing. And experience wise, my family wasn't in the arts or anything of that nature. The most arts that I got was at church or at school, right? The music class at school or the play at school or the choir at church and the Easter play, the Christmas play, all of those things. And so all I remember as a child is going to the Nutcracker. And then I got into broadcasting, television broadcasting in school. And then I went to college and did that. And then I came to Seattle out of a whim. No science or rationale behind it. Just it was away from everything else. And what I've learned in Seattle was that it's a place to create. It's a place where you can find your audience, no matter what kind of art you do. It's very open to the process of developing artists versus, I would say, in North Carolina, where I went recently and I saw Dreamgirls in North Carolina, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, we do have a theater here. Why didn't I know about this growing up? I rolled past it all the time, but it just wasn't in my family's nature to participate in arts. And I think it's getting better there. But the opportunities here to create and find an audience that is open to my stories is greater here. But now that I'm trying to take that trajectory to the next level, when I travel and perform, my stories are reaching those as well. And the opportunities are there. And it's fun then because I get my confidence here in Seattle to go everywhere else.
I have kind of the same experience. It seems like like I was in Dallas. I was in Houston for a while. I was in Dallas for a while. I was also living in Florida, but like Dallas, they say it's a big art city, but there's no like it's only like for people who've made it. You know what I mean? It's like there's no ecosystem. There's no all the way down. You know, like all of that whole to support the whole community aspect, from kids doing community projects all the way up to artists who are building their careers and everything. Seems like Seattle has a really good support for like the whole ecosystem of different things, and I like that. I
love that, in various genres. So it's great. I once heard Felicia Rashad was in town directing Gem of the Ocean once for the Seattle Rep, and she did this talk, and she said, Seattle is where you come and develop your skills. It's where you can come and work it out, do everything you do. And then when you go to places like New York and Chicago, it's about nothing but the work. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, yeah, and that's why I'm in Seattle. I'm developing. And but the thing is once we get people to develop, how do we keep them here? How do we keep them working so that they can make a livable wage as artists?
Yeah. Do you think how have you found like getting the tech sector involved in like performance art and that sort of thing? Have you had any luck, or how's that been for you?
Microsoft is a great support when I look at the tech sector. I mean, actually, I'm going there next week for a community meeting. They invite us out to their campus a couple times a year as community partners. And so they support my organization, Central District Forum for Arts and Ideas, and they make it a very easy and welcoming process. Other tech companies, I haven't been able to break that wall. But that's the exact conversation that we're having at all the tables. I just came back from a meeting in San Jose with a group called Leveraging a Network of Equity for the National Performance Network. And it's 7 of us in this cohort. And all of us were talking about, we receive funding, and one of the things that's on everybody's list is technology. And it's like, well, how do we engage the technical field? And they thought because I was in Seattle that I had the answers. And I was like, no, I don't have the answers. But we're all trying to figure it out. And so it's still that wall of trying to figure out how do we get them to come more out into the community, because they can get very siloed, I think, on their campuses because they have so much access. I mean, you hear of, and it's not just tech, it's like all the major companies, right? Like Starbucks, you hear of, oh, and John Legend was there today. Or you're like, huh? What? Or a poet came in, Jennifer Hudson was there. And you're like, so they can they have the funding to bring arts there. And so it's like, how do we make sure it comes out into the community and get them involved in different ways, and not just to solve our technical problems, but be a part of the conversation, because they're changing the world, and that their world changes so fast. How do we keep up with that as artists?
Yeah. I think so many of them are they've just moved here. Right. So the sense of community, I don't know. My husband and I were talking about this, and it's like, do you get a real sense of community until you have kids or until you have a second generation? You know what I'm saying? But getting them to come out into the community, because that's the thing with the visual arts, is getting them to come out, like actually come out. Microsoft is really supportive and things, but among others, and Amazon does a pretty good job of supporting the visual arts, but getting them to come out, to the art walks and come out to the performances and things. It's like, that is everybody's question.
And they have tough schedules too. They're on the grind, and I can understand at the end of the day, you want to go home. But there's something special about getting out into the community, and even when you're tired. I mean, how many nights as an artist, right? Where we're like, man, I can't make it to another event. I just need to go to sleep. And you're like, okay, I'm going to go. And then it's like, oh my goodness, I would have died if I wouldn't have made this event, right? Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad I made it. So just trying to get that extra push. It's just what we have to do, is build those relationships and just slowly push into their world. Yeah.
Speaking of that, I want to kind of talk about your process, or your, how do you have a set schedule, like for writing or for recording or whatever? Or how does that work for performance artists?
For me, no, I don't have a set schedule. I wish I was that disciplined. I'm one of those from the heart writers. And so I write when it comes to me, if it's my own project. So I have pieces where I was driving in the car and I came up with an idea. I pick up the phone, hit that voice memo button, and start recording. And as I'm driving down the street, or something is just on my mind so much that I can't sleep. And I don't recommend this, but I sleep with my iPad next to me. That's the single life for you. You can sleep with your iPad, and when you wake up, you be like, wait a minute, let me get this note down. I also have a notepad. If I can pick up a pen and find a pen, I'll do that as well, because I know you're not supposed to. It deters your sleep if you look at that screen. And that's what I do. I just, whatever's on my heart, then I write. And there's been times where I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to a coffee shop and I'm gonna try to write. And it's worked, and I've been surprised. Like, oh my goodness, I actually had a thought that made sense. But I just try to write from the heart, and being an independent artist, I don't have that pressure of anyone trying to make me write or anything like that. And so yeah, I just go with the flow, whatever comes to me. But at the same time, when I'm hired to write for other people or other situations, like for example, I wasn't hired, but my friend in Atlanta called me on a Wednesday and said, I need to do this video for, she was making this proposal to someone, and they're visual. And she was like, I need this piece, and I need this piece about myself. And I was like, okay. And then she was like, I need you to write it. And I was like, okay. And then I said, well, send me a list of all the words that describe yourself. And then she didn't tell me when she needed it at that point. But that night it was on my mind. So I started writing on it. And then she texted me and said, oh, I need this by Friday. And I was like, what? Well, thank you. And so I wrote it. And I was like, well, she needed it tonight so she can memorize and do any edits tomorrow to be ready for videotaping on Friday. And I surprise myself when I can do that. I'm like, I did it. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Because it's hard. I didn't go to school for writing. I didn't do any of that. So I always question if I'm a writer. And so when opportunities come like that, I'm just like, and I make it happen. It's like, yeah, I can write. Okay. And then that only lasts for a few minutes until the opportunity comes again.
Everybody that has sat across from me that's a writer, that has books, that has all this stuff, and they're like winning all this stuff, I don't know if I'm a real writer. Everybody says that. It's like,
Yeah.
Same thing. It's the same thing. I actually knew this woman back in Texas named Lavita Strickland. She was a painter. She painted like barns and stuff like that. That, you know, it's not one exactly my kind, but they were beautiful. But I mean, that woman sold so much art. Everybody loved her. She was in all the collections. All the colleges had her because they were really beautiful. They weren't just like typical barn art. They were stunning. But she told me, she says, like, every time, she was 76 years old, and she said, every time somebody buys one of my paintings, and this is like, we're talking about like 6-digit paintings. Every time I'm like, another sucker. I'm not a real painter. They just thought I was. I just fooled them into thinking I was a real painter. I'm like, Lupita, you've been doing this like 4 decades, and you still think that. Like, she's a fake. But,
you know, it's funny because one night we did a show. I think it was a couple weeks ago. CD Forum did a show, and I'm taking one of my friends home. She's a Team Sharon member, and so she works on all my live events for me, for my storytelling. And she just asked me, she was like, you know, how do you feel like knowing that you create these events that make people feel a certain way or think or have a great experience? And what does that feel like? And I was like, huh? I never thought about it. I was like, it feels good. And I was like, yeah. And then I had to sit up a little bit, and I was like, yeah, that's what we did tonight. Yeah, that's what we do. And then I was like, I guess if I don't feel that way, if I don't feel good, if I'm not excited about it, then I'll be scared. Right? As soon as I start to let down my guard and not be surprised when something goes great, I'm surprised every time. They showed up. They're here. Oh, did you hear them say my lines with me? Oh my goodness, that was so exciting. So when I stop feeling that excitement, I think it's time for me to get out the business.
all right. Well, on that, would you like to read us something? We're going to take a little break in a little bit, and I would love to have you read something first, though.
Yeah, I will read something from my upcoming album called Shook, which I hope to record sometime this summer, live, I hope. That's the plan. See, it's that, always that doubt, right? I hope.
Yeah.
I doubt. It's going to happen sometime this summer. And it doesn't have an official title, so I just call it You Can't Take My Words. I will call you a slave. I will call you a nigga. I will call you a Negro. I will call you an African American, but I call myself black. The power in how I see myself, you can no longer have. You can no longer check the box for who I am because I'm in control. I'm black. I'm black to my bones. The skin wrapped around me is black. The culture of my African ancestors is black. The seeds of my mother and father in which I was born are black. I know the language in which they taught me. I know the manners they've instilled in me. I know who I am goes beyond what you see. Because my blackness is my culture that doesn't suppress me. I'm one soul amongst many who hasn't always been free. But today and every day, my skin does more than define me. It challenges me to take my rightful place, to rely on the strength of my forefathers and to bear the crosses of the past, only to lift the voices of the future. I'm black because my soul says, be proud, be black, be you, my sister.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey there! Did you know that you can find original lines on both iTunes and Stitcher? So whether you have an iPhone or Android, you can always catch the latest episode. Be sure to subscribe to us, and we love reviews. Thanks!
All right, and we're back with Sharon Nyree Williams. Okay, Sharon, you've talked a good bit about Team Sharon. So tell me a little bit about how does that work?
Team Sharon started off as advisors, creative advisors. So Kevin Mayfield, who's one of my advisors, mentors from Seattle University for the MFA program, and other professors and things of that nature, and Chris Sumption, who's a dramaturg, and my director, Gina Davis and and Trina Gadsden, and they were advisors. They were helping me. I had made a decision a few years ago I had started an organization called the Mahogany Project back in 2006 or something like that. And I had decided to leave that alone and just become this storyteller and tell my own work. And I felt as though I needed advisors around me to help move me creatively and say, I'm thinking about this project. What do you think? Or how do I get into conferences? How do I get out there more? How do I get my stories out to the world? So that's how it started. And then I realized that there were people that always work with me, and there were people that always support me and coming to my shows. There are people that aren't able to come to my shows but still support me. And that's when it just became this whole team sharing thing. So I have everything from my advisors and mentors to people who might just buy my albums, or people that just show up to all my events. And so that's team sharing, and they keep me grounded and ready to move forward.
Very cool. That's gotta be a huge support, a huge help.
Yes. And sometimes we get in those places where we don't want to write or we don't want to do anything. And someone from Team Sharon never fails. It could be my father. It could be my friend Sandra or my friend Felicia, where they'll call and say, I ain't heard you talk about any new work lately. What are you doing? And I'm like, Team Sharon sucks sometimes. But that's what they're there for. I know from counseling that I have to be creative to stay happy. And so they know that they have to make sure I'm doing it. And it's not annoying. Sometimes it is when you get in that place where you just don't want to do anything. But after I say, ain't nothing wrong with me, and then think about it and be like, okay, they were right. And then I go back and say, I'm sorry, you were right. I haven't written anything. I'm going to try. And it works out. So, yeah, I couldn't do this by myself. It takes a village.
Do you do a lot of collaborative work? It seems like you've done a lot of collaborative work also with like video work and stuff like that. How is that? Do you like to do collaborative work?
I love collaborative work. Actually, I didn't know that I loved collaborative work until Kevin Mayfield said, "You're a natural collaborator." And I was like, what? And part of me getting rid of not doing the Mahogany Project anymore, and it's still continuing. Some other young ladies is running it, but was that I didn't want to collaborate as much. That's what I thought, right? I was like, I just want to focus on me. And then when I did my first album, Humanity, and I started writing the credits, I was like, this is not just you. This is about 20 other people. And so I get an opportunity to collaborate with musicians. I have a filmmaker collective that I'm a part of, where we're scattered out around the country. And when we have a project, we call each other. So I'm constantly collaborating there. So it's just, I'm constantly collaborating on my writing and thinking about new things. And so it's just natural. I mean, there's ways to be, there's times as an artist where you have to be by yourself, and writing can be very lonely, right? It's just you, the pen, the paper, maybe a quiet space, and you're by yourself. But then there's times where you bring everybody into the fold around your vision, and they support that, and then at the same time you get to help them boost what they're interested in. And seeing that transformation, seeing artists that I've worked with in the past move on and do other projects makes me happy.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So what was your maybe your favorite collaborative project? Do you have a favorite, or is that hard to?
Ooh, my favorite collaborative project, I think, is coming. I do think it's coming. I think it's Shook. I think it's going to be a great collaborative project, only because it's something that I've never done before, and that I'm trying to do the album live. Mm. And so I have my first music director, working with a different studio, bringing in the live musicians that I worked with before, and now bringing in the musicians that I worked with before that worked solo. Now they'll come into this process, and I'm excited about it. And so I think that's going to be very interesting. And then I would have to say the Consciousness of Love album. And I say that because I was kind of like, I did Humanity, which was my first album that I didn't know anything about how to produce an album. Mm-hmm. I waited an entire year to even start the work on the album because I was waiting for this grand producer to come in, take the material and make it work. And then finally I said, well, I can't wait any longer. I'm just going to book some studio time, go in there, record this is the album, and see what happened and start putting the pieces together. And so it was this bumpy road and trying to figure out, I don't know anything about engineering. I don't know anything about any of that stuff. But then when I came back for Consciousness of Love and I was telling more personal stories and I was comfortable enough to tell the engineer, no, I don't like that, and he was listening to me and I was in my space, and then we had all these different artists from a 5-piece band to a person with a trumpet to, we had all these different things. Yeah. But it was just so much to it. And then we did not the video, but the release party and bringing in the other artists and working with Chris Sumption as my director and really seeing that vision realize and saying that I wanted, it was just simple things that I knew that confidence was there. Mm-hmm. Like in the room, we was at Washington Hall and I decided to do it downstairs and everybody questioned why I wanted to do it downstairs in a small room and not the 350 room upstairs. And I was like, I want the intimacy. Mm-hmm. I want the Maya Angelou effect. If you ever saw Maya Angelou, I saw her 3 times in Seattle. It would be her, a podium and a microphone and a living room set. And I was like, I want that effect. And Team Sharon members was able to find me a place to rent a table setting and some chairs. And I had all of that. That's cool. And I had Maya Angelou's picture looking at me from the table, and the artist sat around the table, and it was just like, ooh, this is where I'm going. This is the direction that I'm going in. And the room was packed. And so it was like, this is why I wanted to do it downstairs. I want that intimacy. Mm-hmm. I wanted all these different things. And I'll eventually get the 350 room or the 500 room. I've done 500 rooms. I've done 1,000 rooms for other people, but it was nothing like that moment. Yeah. I'm bringing that together.
Well, let me ask you, my big question. Why do you think people make art?
I think because we have something that we want to say and we don't want to say it in the traditional ways. Right? We don't want to put it into a news story, right? We don't want to put it into a newspaper, but we want to express it. For me, I want to express it in a way that makes people actually feel what I'm talking about, not me just talking at them. I want it to seep into their pores. I want it to reach their heart. And if they knew nothing about it, I want them to see my perspective and then at least acknowledge it. And I think we just want to show the world that there's a different way of interpreting things that happen to us in life or things that we see in life. Because there is art that's just art for art's sake. But then it's that art that, and even that art for art's sake means something to somebody. It's open for interpretation, right? Mm-hmm. It's like I heard Shonda Rhimes on Jimmy Kimmel the other day, and it was like, so you left the ending open to scandal? She was like, yes. And it was like, well, do you know the ending? She was like, yes, but I want you to interpret it. And so that feeling of wanting people to interpret and see things and respond naturally, I think that's what artists look for. And I think some of us do it for therapy. The majority of this Shook album that I'm working on is therapy. And it's the only way I can get it out of my system. That's the only way I feel as though I can get it out of my system without just walking into a padded room and screaming. And so I just think that we want to change the world or have the world see whatever we see in a different way.
That's awesome. Is there something else you'd like to read? I think we can wrap up here pretty soon.
Let's do this. I also did this one at the Auburn thing, and more people went. This is the road that the Auburn Festival. This is more of the road that I was going to go in that day, as far as family pieces is concerned. And so I shared this one, and then I got to all the pieces about how I feel about society. But I love talking about my family, and I think because as I get older, I start to appreciate more where I came from and how it's helped shape me. And at the same time, as the elders are passing away and things of that nature, or people are just passing away in general, it makes me realize that what the part that they played in my life. And so I miss going to the house. I miss going to the house. Going to the house Sundays after church, going to the house on Christmas Day, going to the house in the summer when there was no school, going to the house because we could. I miss going to the house with the pecan tree, vegetables in the field, pink Cadillac under the carport, basketball hoop connected to the tree, screen door, back porch, soda machine, mule out back, chicken coop to the side. I miss going to the house. The little white house where Auntie lived. Family gathered, sisters cooked, children played, preachers ate, friends stopped by. You want a plate? Small town. One store, Horace Parnell's, cheese, bologna, and basic needs. Mr. John sitting under the town biggest pecan tree. Post office before you get to the railroad tracks. Church just over the railroad tracks. Cornfields, cotton fields, school down yonder, dirt roads, horses prancing down the street. I miss going to the house. The house doesn't sit alone. Uncle Dule straight across, Miss Helen to the side, a corner of Jackson pride. Memories, fish fries, Daddy Joe being shaved in his favorite chair, Mimi's silent but strong presence, Daddy Sandy patching up my bruised knee, Miss Helen doing the hustle, Joelle rushing through, I'm not going to stay, I'm just getting a plate. Myrtle talking mess and starting trouble. Uncle Dule outside with the family mule. Auntie moving everyone through the food trough lines. Kids breakdancing in the kitchen. Family history being relived. Remember when? Tell the story about. Laughter filling the room. I miss going to the house. Who wants coffee? Black, 2 sugars, no cream, 3 sugars and 2 creams. Roasted peanuts. Pineapple coconut cake. Pound cake, German chocolate cake, cake, and sweet potato pies too. I miss going to the house. Sunday paper being passed around, television playing, basketball games, hee-haw, Casey Kasem's top 10, solid gold, Young and the Restless in Dallas too. I miss going to the house, the little white house, our family's house. Paneled walls, family pictures on display, room for everyone who wants to stay. Memories made, history preserved. Remember where you came from. Love unconditionally. I miss going to the house.
Okay, and that's going to be it for today's episode. My name is Laura Allen, and I'm your host, and you've been listening to Original Lines, a production of Two Ponies Press. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, or any of the other major podcast services, or you can visit us at www.twoponiespress.com and find out more. Thanks.